Don Davis, a systemic failure of justice? Imagine being trapped, not just by bars, but by a mind you can't control. This is the story of Don Davis, a man whose fate raises profound questions about justice, mental health, and the ultimate punishment. Give a like and subscribe, leave a comment. Don Davis was convicted of the capital murder of Jane Daniel in Benton County, Arkansas. The crime, a brutal execution-style killing during a robbery, shocked the community. Davis was originally condemned to death on March 6, 1992, for a crime committed on October 12, 1990. His scheduled execution date was April 17, 2017, a date that hung over him for decades. Richard Daniel returned home to find his wife, Jane Daniel, dead in their basement. She had been fatally shot. The scene painted a picture of calculated violence. Davis had stolen a .44 caliber Magnum revolver from a neighbor prior to the murder. He then forced Jane Daniel into the basement of her home. He shot her in the back of the head. The motive, according to prosecutors, was robbery. He sought to steal valuables, specifically gold jewelry. The stolen items, including a Lucien Piccard watch, pearls, and a Nikon camera, were later pawned in Las Vegas. This act of desperation ultimately led to his capture. Davis was apprehended in Albuquerque, New Mexico, thanks to pawnshop records. The evidence seemed damning, but the full story was far more complex. The defense argued for leniency, highlighting Davis's difficult upbringing. They painted a picture of a troubled youth shaped by abandonment and instability. Davis's father testified about his son's abandonment by his mother. He hoped to show the jury the roots of Davis's problems. The defense requested funds for an independent psychiatric examiner. They cited Davis's ADHD and unstable upbringing as crucial factors. The judge, however, denied the request for funds. This decision would later become a central point of contention in appeals. Davis was convicted of capital murder. He was sentenced to death on March 6, 1992, setting in motion a decades-long legal battle. In 1994, Davis appealed, claiming ineffective counsel. He argued that his legal representation had failed him. In 1999, the appeal was denied by the Benton County Circuit Court. The Arkansas Supreme Court upheld the denial, seemingly closing the door on his legal options. In 2017, while on death row, Davis attempted suicide. This act of desperation underscored the immense psychological toll of his situation. His execution was stayed by the Arkansas Supreme Court. The stay was pending the outcome of a U.S. Supreme Court decision, offering a brief glimmer of hope. The trial judge did order a psychiatric assessment. However, the adequacy of this assessment became a major point of contention. The psychiatrist noted that ADHD could have contributed to the crime. This raised questions about Davis's culpability and the role of his mental health. The defense argued for independent psychiatric assistance under Ake v. Oklahoma. This landmark case guarantees indigent defendants access to expert assistance when mental health is a significant factor. The request for funds for an independent expert was denied. This denial, critics argued, deprived Davis of a fair chance to present a complete defense. An appeals court dissenting judge argued the original examination was insufficient. He cited the lack of a thorough examination and psychological testing. The dissenting judge believed that a more comprehensive evaluation was necessary. He felt the initial assessment failed to adequately address Davis's mental state. Amnesty International urged appeals for clemency. They raised serious concerns over the denial of expert psychiatric assistance at trial. They argued that the denial violated Davis's right to a fair trial. They believed a more thorough examination of his mental health was crucial. Appeals were made to Governor Asa Hutchinson. Advocates hoped the governor would recognize the potential for a miscarriage of justice. The call for clemency highlighted the ethical and moral complexities of the case. It forced a reckoning with the potential for executing a man whose mental health was inadequately considered. Despite the appeals and concerns, Don Davis was executed on April 20, 2017. The execution was carried out by lethal injection. His last words were a statement of defiance and faith. He proclaimed his innocence and professed his belief in God. The execution sparked outrage among death penalty opponents. They argued that it was a tragic example of systemic failures in the justice system. The Don Davis case raises fundamental questions about the death penalty. It forces us to confront the potential for executing individuals with mental health issues. It highlights the importance of adequate legal representation for indigent defendants. It underscores the need for access to expert psychiatric assistance. The case also raises questions about the role of childhood trauma and its impact on criminal behavior. It challenges us to consider the complex factors that contribute to violence. The Ake v. Oklahoma ruling is central to understanding the Davis case. This Supreme Court decision guarantees indigent defendants the right to psychiatric assistance when their mental state is a significant factor in their defense. The Ake standard requires that the defendant demonstrate that their sanity at the time of the offense is likely to be a significant factor at trial. It also applies when the defendant's mental state is relevant to sentencing. In the Davis case, the defense argued that his ADHD and unstable upbringing met the Ake standard. They believed that an independent psychiatric evaluation was necessary to fully assess his mental state. The denial of funds for an independent expert was seen as a violation of Davis's rights under Ake. Critics argued that it deprived him of a fair opportunity to present a complete defense. Attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder that can significantly impact behavior. It is characterized by inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. While ADHD does not excuse criminal behavior, it can contribute to it. It can impair judgment, increase impulsivity, and make it difficult to control emotions. In the Davis case, the psychiatrist noted that ADHD could have contributed to the crime. This raised questions about his culpability and the extent to which his mental health played a role. Critics argued that a more thorough evaluation of Davis's ADHD was necessary. They believed that it could have provided valuable insights into his behavior and motivations. Davis's difficult upbringing, marked by abandonment and instability, likely had a profound impact on his mental health. Childhood trauma can increase the risk of mental illness and criminal behavior. Trauma can disrupt brain development and impair emotional regulation. It can lead to feelings of anger, hopelessness, and despair. In the Davis case, his traumatic childhood was presented as a mitigating factor. The defense argued that it contributed to his mental health issues and his criminal behavior. Critics argued that the court failed to adequately consider the impact of Davis's trauma. They believed that it was a crucial factor in understanding his actions. The Don Davis case forces us to confront the question of justice. Was it just to execute a man whose mental health was inadequately considered? Did the denial of funds for an independent psychiatric expert violate his rights? Did the court fail to adequately consider the impact of his trauma? These are difficult questions with no easy answers. They highlight the complexities of the death penalty and the potential for systemic failures. The death penalty is irreversible. Once an execution is carried out, there is no possibility of correcting a mistake. The risk of executing an innocent person is a major concern for death penalty opponents. They argue that the justice system is not infallible and that mistakes can happen. In the Davis case, the concerns about his mental health raise questions about his culpability. Was he fully responsible for his actions? If there was a reasonable doubt about his culpability, should he have been executed? These are questions that continue to haunt the case. The death penalty is far more expensive than life imprisonment. The costs associated with capital cases, including investigations, trials, and appeals, are significantly higher. These costs are borne by taxpayers. Critics argue that the money could be better spent on crime prevention programs, mental health services, and other social programs. The Davis case illustrates the high cost of the death penalty. His decades-long legal battle consumed significant resources. Critics argue that these resources could have been used to address the root causes of crime and to provide support for victims of violence. The Don Davis case is a stark reminder of the need for reform in the criminal justice system. We must ensure that all defendants have access to adequate legal representation and expert assistance. We must address the root causes of crime, including poverty, trauma, and mental illness. We must invest in programs that prevent violence and support victims. We must also reconsider the death penalty. Is it a just and effective punishment? Does it truly deter crime? These are questions that we must continue to ask ourselves. The Don Davis case demands that we do so. The execution of Don Davis serves as a chilling reminder of the flaws within our justice system, a system where mental health concerns are often dismissed and the scales of justice are tipped against the most vulnerable. This isn't just about one case. It's about the countless others who face similar injustices. We must demand change. Contact your elected officials and urge them to support legislation that ensures adequate mental health evaluations for defendants, abolishes the death penalty, and invests in rehabilitation programs. Donate to organizations like the Innocence Project and the American Civil Liberties Union, who are fighting for justice and equality in our courts. Share this video to raise awareness and spark conversation. Only through collective action can we create a system that truly serves justice for all.